You can holler, you can applaud, you can scream, you can do anything you want. I can't hear you anyway.
Welcome to the Salt Lake Dirt Podcast. I'm your host, Kyler Bingham. Today on the show, we have author Laura Bogart, who is most known for her nonfiction writing. Her work has appeared in The Atlantic, The Guardian, Spin, the AV Club, Vulture, IndieWire, all kinds of different publications. And her first novel just came out in March, mid-March to be exact, and it is called Don't You Know I Love You. We did a print interview with Laura at the time of the book release, but mid-March things were a little chaotic, to say the least. So I wanted to have her on the podcast after a couple months. But I love this book, Don't You Know I Love You, out by Dzanc Books. So on the interview, we talk about the book, the pandemic, politics, dogs. We covered a lot of ground. I really enjoyed my conversation with Laura. So without further ado, here is Laura Bogart on the Salt Lake Dirt Podcast. It may be kind of a sensitive topic, but it came out right as everything was blowing up. So maybe you could talk a bit about that and what was your experience. I'm hoping the book is getting some good attention because it's really good.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, I have been. Oh,
my pups, they're lonely today, so I'm letting them in the room.
Oh, my puppy! I love dogs. My dog is like downstairs chilling with my mom. So
nice.
She's like all about that grandma life. Yeah. So it's yeah, I mean, I sort of, the way this was happening was as we were getting into early March, we were like, well, I mean, I don't think anybody really knew, or at least I was not paying super attention to things, I should say. I was not, and I kept thinking, okay, well, maybe, and then things started to kind of roll back and be postponed and canceled, and understandably so, because people's health matters more than, launching a book. And I will say, like, I had a few really hard and sad days when the events that you plan to launch your debut book get postponed or canceled or changed in format. And there's a bit of an adjustment period to it, emotionally. But I think part of that, and my agent had this conversation with me too, and I knew it, that in the grand scheme of things, given how devastating this pandemic has been for so many people, people losing their lives, people losing their loved ones, people losing their livelihoods, people whose worlds have just been shattered by this, like, this is a drop in the bucket. This is nothing compared to what other people are going through. And so I will say, though, that the literary community as a whole, like, really rallied behind those of us who had books coming out at this time. And I got a number of opportunities to do events that I probably would not have had an opportunity to do otherwise, because they were, through venues or locations that I might not have been able to afford traveling to. So I think in some ways, like, having these online options has made it easier for authors who are not getting fronted big book tours, or who don't have super advances that they could go into and pull money out of for touring and stuff. It has made it a little bit easier in some ways to share word about the book and participate in things. And I think the other thing too is that I have had to learn to let go of, there are certain things that are the barometers of your success, and then one is you get the in-person thing, you sign things for people in person, and hopefully I will get to do those things, but I've had to let go of them. I've had to learn to kind of go with the flow of things. And I've had to keep a lot of perspective about who is really being impacted by what's been going on in the world.
Yeah, that's a good positive spin on things. And
Yeah.
I mean, you're totally right. Like a long time ago, when I interviewed one of my first novelists, I was kind of naive to the whole thing, and I asked him because I loved his book, and I asked
Yeah.
him, and he was with a big publisher, and I said,
Mm.
you have a big book tour coming, and he just laughed at me like, it doesn't really work like that anymore.
No,
So,
no.
and I was like, are you kidding me? This book's incredible, you know? So yeah, I mean, that's incredible that you have all those people rallying. I mean, the person who turned me on to the book was Laura Albert, a
Yes.
mutual
Yes.
friend, and
Yes.
that was just on her own accord. She reached out to me and said, "You got to get a copy of Laura Bogart's new book. It's
Yeah, she's a
incredible."
good
So,
egg.
yeah, she is. I mean, she really gets behind, um, anyone she believes in. She's really pushing for them. So it's good to have people
Yeah.
like that in your corner for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I think honestly, just like she was really an advocate for this book early on, and that was very helpful. And then my agent and my press also were really lovely about things too. And so that is the benefit, I think, of working with an indie press is they have to hustle and they know they have to hustle. So they work really hard to help get the word out too.
Right. Yeah, they were like immediately got back to me. So
Yeah.
that's not as common as you would think. So
No.
that's really I love when smaller presses, really push for their authors. It's great.
No, I love Laura. I love Dzanc. I love, my agent, Madison. And everyone's great. I mean, everyone has really been very supportive of this book.
Right. So you're in Baltimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
like the book, it takes place in Baltimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yes.
there's probably not, and then I just we we talked about it when I interviewed before for the print, but
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like the genesis for the idea of the book. Where did it come from? Maybe
Mm.
how long did it take you to write this? How long was it in the works for?
Oh, these are good questions. Yeah, I mean, I started this book when, like, in concept, I should say, like years ago when I was in grad school, and I was writing this like very high concept novel in grad school. I was in grad school in DC because I thought that's what you had to do. I thought you had to do like very high concept, very artsy fartsy stuff in order to get noticed. And it did not work. And my advisors were like basically like, instead of trying to do all these pyrotechnics, you should go and focus on like a simple story. And I was like, okay, well, this big artsy fartsy pyrotechnic novel that I thought was gonna like get me this big dashing debut. And I talk about this very candidly because I wish that people had talked about it when I was sort of like starting out. And so I started doing these short stories about this family in Baltimore. And the very first short story I did was actually from the father's perspective. And I was like, whoa, this was very raw. This is very lean. This is very angry. And I was like, I want to pursue this. And it was about his relationship with his daughter. And then the daughter was like, but I want to have my say in this as well. You can't do this without talking to me. And I was like, okay. So then I started doing stories from her perspective. And this is like 2010-ish, 2011-ish. And then around 2012, like I had been publishing like pop culture criticism essays, and I've been fortunate enough to get some attention from that. And I had people reach out to me, and the common consensus was, and I had a conversation with one man in particular who was very lovely, but he was like, you need to make this a novel. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do that. I'm scared. And so then I put it aside for like about a year. And then I tried to write this as a novel, and I made the mistake of, I tried to outline it within an inch of its life because I thought that's how you write a novel, right? You have to know everything that happens in the order that it happens, or you're just gonna go flying out into outer space.
Yeah.
And I corseted the shit out of it. It did not work. I can curse on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I corseted the shit out of it. It just did not work. It was like, bitch, I gotta breathe. And I just, get me out of this corset. And, so don't corset the shit out of your things.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, what do I honestly have to lose here? And so I just started letting go and letting do. And once I started trusting my intuition with it, it came out fairly quickly. And like literally, even like the protagonist in the novel makes artwork, and I had this vision of what her artwork was going to be, and it was a little hokey, it was a little on the nose. And then one of the days I was just like, you know what, fuck it, just let go, just see what comes out. The vision of the artwork that she makes in the book came out, and I was like, you know what, I'm listening to myself now, this is what I'm going to do. So then once I did it, I would say it came out in probably about 2 years, once I was like, okay, no more dicking around, just do it. So it probably came out about like 2 years. And then the process of publishing it, I finished it around 2015. We edited it and got it on the market in 2016. And we all know what happened in 2016.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was really hard. And, we can talk more about this if you like, but I'm always very transparent about the fact that it took like 2016 through late 2018 for this book to find the right press, because I feel like we always hear those stories about like the wunderkind who wrote a novel in the last 3 months of their MFA and then got a 6-figure deal, and now they're on the cover of the New Yorker. And I think reality is probably closer to my experience.
Right. No, that's good. I love that, the transparency there. Yeah, it just reminded me on Chuck Palahniuk's new book on writing. He had a good point that made me think of your book, how he said when you're writing a novel, try to focus on, if you're breaking it down by chapter, try to focus on each chapter being a short story that can stand on its own. And so that's what when I read your book, I kind of got that, because you could take each chapter and kind of like what was happening in it, you could just jump right into the characters and kind of get a sense of what's going on, who is what. And I think, it's absolutely great. I love the dad, by the way. He's my favorite character in the book.
That means a lot, because he was hard. I mean, and I had to walk a line with him, because like I'm very inspired by pop culture. Like I'm very inspired by like media. And it's funny when you talk about chapters, like I almost think about chapters in terms of like episodes of TV, where like it's just like
that.
It's just like you say, like you could pick up like an episode of Mad Men and be like, you would have an instinctual idea of who these characters were and like what their relationships were, even if you didn't know everything that had happened before the episode, in question. So I thought about that. When I was writing The Dad, I was very much thinking about the anti-hero trope and why it is so appealing and the work that has to go into deconstructing that trope. And I was also thinking a lot about how we define people as monsters very easily. And some people do things that are very monstrous and irredeemable. I'm not saying, that, but I was very curious in this idea that he is someone that is very easy to write off. But I think there is more power in understanding how he got to be the way he is, just physically abusive of his daughter, unable to control his rage. I was very interested in how does someone get like that? How does this instinct, because he has like a paternal instinct to love and protect, but it gets curdled. It becomes rage, and everything that he feels becomes rage because that's safer and that's more comfortable for him. And I think that's something that we're taught culturally. I think it seems like, to me, something that men are conditioned to think of more so than women, at least from what I've observed. And I was very interested in it. So I really focused a lot on that when I was creating The Dad. So thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's a tough character. So I mean, he's so real. He's like
Yeah.
he's a living, breathing person.
Yeah.
So and I think a good novel is when you have characters where it does challenge you as a
Mm.
reader and it makes you feel different things, it makes you feel conflicted. So yeah, well done on that.
Thank you.
I think the
Thank
character
you.
was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe we could talk a bit about that. You said 2016. We all know what
Mm.
happened then. So I'm kind of, maybe you could talk a bit about, if you want to, about what kind of was going on from your perspective in the literary world, and then
Mm.
I'm curious. Like I've heard different authors talk about like kind of looking forward to this year and seeing like, are people going to be
Mm.
not looking at books at all, like not reading anything, or are they going to be so overwhelmed with the reality of what's going on, they just we want to check out as much as possible, and books are going to be flying off the shelf?
That's a good
I don't
question.
know. So I've heard two authors that I really like say like, oh, I'm
Two
so glad
different
I'm not
things.
getting published in November. Like I think their book is
Oh,
coming out in 2022.
oh yeah.
It's being pushed off. And then someone else is like, oh no, there's going to be, this wave of really cool creativity coming from the pandemic. And I don't know. So I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
curious, or maybe it'll just be like status quo. Nothing will be too much different, but I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I would say, it was in 2016. Certainly, we thought this was going to be this angry little hell starter feminist book about this angry young woman, right? And coming out at the time when we were going to be having our first woman president, and that did not happen.
Yeah.
And to say the least, I mean, I don't know about you, but I like literally went into shock that night. Like I went into physical shock.
I
Like, yeah.
I did too. Like I was checking the news, and I'm an hour ahead of Los Angeles, so
Mhm.
I'm Mountain Time, and I was
Yeah.
checking it, and I think I went to bed about 9:30 or
Hmm.
10, and I
Hmm.
still was like, there's no way, there's no way, and so I woke up
Yeah.
that morning, um, in complete shock as well. I went into work. I
Hmm.
work in a high school with a lot of
Oh yeah.
minority students,
They were
a lot of
terrified.
kids from, their families are from Mexico, and they had been looking to me for answers, which I don't really don't have any. And I was like, there's no
Yeah.
way. You got to be very careful of like stating your
Yeah.
opinion as a teacher. But they were asking me
I
kind of
bet.
scared, like, oh, is he going to get in? My family's going to have to go back to Mexico. I'm like, I said, well, first, even if he gets in, that won't happen. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I mean, nothing
Mm.
happened, thank God,
To them.
here, like anyone that I know personally. But they
Yeah.
were terrified. And the next day,
Of
that was
course.
just kind of like, a lot of teachers called out sick that day. I'll be honest. A lot of people
Yeah, I bet.
were shook up, and it was I was at a loss,
Yeah.
as a lot of people were. I was just shocked. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and I think we might have even taken a little bit of time off from just because I think people had to grieve, they had to be shocked, they had to be
Absolutely.
mobilized. And I honestly, I don't think we'll ever get over it. Like, I don't think, I mean, I think especially for like a cohort of women, we'll never fully get over it because it teaches you something about what society thinks of you and how well you're valued. And it certainly, makes you look at people. I mean, as a white woman, it certainly made me look at some of the people around me and go, oh, like, we are not as far along as we would have
Hmm.
wanted to be or thought we would have wanted to be. So that was hard. And I think honestly, I was in sort of like a fugue state. And I was freelancing too at that point. Like I was full time freelancing. And I remember thinking, oh, well, this is going to be okay because she'll get in. We'll have, the healthcare stuff will get straightened, even strengthened. We'll have, more prosperity. And it was like, oh, shit, no, I got to go in house as soon as humanly possible. Um, and so that was all really hard. I mean, as for 2020, I will say, like, I'm grateful that I had the editing process of this book in 2019 before. I mean, I finished it up like right around the time of like impeachment and everything like that, because it's hard not to be engrossed in it. It's hard not
Hmm.
to be just constantly sucked into this cycle of like what's going to happen now. And it's all very life or death. It's all very, extreme struggle. And I mean, I know I'm grateful that I came out in March. Like, I think that was a good time for the book. I can see why both of the people that you talked to would have different perspectives. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to feel in November. I mean, I know right now I am trying to make an active effort to think about creating new things on my own, trying to read things, research things for new projects, and that is helpful. But like, it's really hard not to be like engrossed in the world. And, because this feels very life or death. I mean, this feels very much like the end of the Republic. And
Sure, yeah.
there are people who are far smarter than I am that are saying that same thing. So I don't know. I can, like I said, all I can tell you is I'm grateful that I came out in March and not November.
It came out like right around March 15th, right? 14th? Or when did it come
St.
out?
Patrick's Day.
Did it
St.
really?
Patrick's Day. Yeah.
That was like right as everything was blowing up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just like nobody knew what it, I mean, at least in my corner of the world, nobody knew what it was. Like we were like, I mean, I remember, some people I knew their companies were like, get ready to telework, go buy toilet paper, go do this, go do that. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go do that then. But then it didn't hit me until like March and April, like how serious it was. And the kind of constant slog about, here we are, it's early August, and I don't know about you, but I did not think this was going to be going on for so long.
Yeah, same here. I thought maybe I had a trip planned in early July. I'm like, well, I think it'll be under control by then. And nope, I had to cancel everything.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. My dogs have honestly been the thing that have kept me sane during this because they're so happy to have me home all the time.
Yes. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have two. I have a Cairn Terrier, little one, and then I have like a medium Schnauzer mix, and then I have a Chihuahua mix. I don't know what he is. So I have too many dogs, but they're
no, it's no such thing.
But they keep me sane, and they're just so happy. I think they're gonna be in for a rude awakening when I have to go back on a more of a full-time schedule. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what kind of dog do you have?
I have a black lab mix, and her name is Mina, and she is full of sass. And it's funny, when I was writing this book, I had a German Shepherd named Tova, and the girl in the book has a dog named Valentina, and Valentina is definitely inspired by Tova. And Tova was actually, it's funny, she passed away right before the election in 2016.
Oh, wow.
I feel like on some level she was like, I know what's coming and fuck this shit.
I'm out.
I'm out. No, she wouldn't have done that. But it was literally like, it was like a country song leading up to that. I mean, it was like my dog died. I had a big freelance contract that I like loved, and they're one of their clients like dropped them, and so they had to let me go, and then Trump won the election. So it was like not a great time. Like 2016 was not a great time. So it's funny, I thought, oh, I'm gonna wait like years before I adopt another dog, and then there's those of you who can't see it, there is a beautiful puppy up in the
this is yeah, this is Cosmo. He's the Chihuahua mix. So we named him after Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld because he's a spaz.
Well,
anyway.
It's funny, both mine came with their names. Tova came with her name from Rescue, and then I found out what it meant. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep this. And then Mina I adopted on Halloween, and I think her rescue group named her after Mina Harker from Dracula because she was found with a male dog name, and they named him Vlad. And they're like coal black lab mixes, and so apparently very high prey drive. So I was like, I'm keeping this name. It's hilarious.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, what are you reading these days? Are you able to? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of getting back into reading. So
Yes.
I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus. I couldn't read. I'm
No.
working on a project right now. I couldn't write. So I'm
Mm.
just slowly getting back into the swing of things. Have you been struggling with that like me? Or are you able to just kind of focus and get some
I
reading
have
done?
struggled. I have struggled. I have struggled. Like I said, and just like you, it's like it's hard to like hold a thought. I've been doing some research for something that is like forthcoming. So I've been doing a lot of like reading online, like a lot of like JSTOR.
Mhm.
But I did get a chance. I mean, I've been lucky that I've been doing some promotional stuff with some really good authors. Like I had a chance to do something with Alana Masad,
Oh,
and her
nice.
book. It's really good. If you haven't read it, it's
I haven't read
really.
it. What's it called?
It's called All My Mother's Lovers,
Okay.
and it's a really lovely read, and it's just like it feels very good to read it in this time period. And then Rachel Verona Cody's book, Too Much, that was like very lyrical, and I really like that. And then Amber Sparks, I love her book, short stories. I've been reading a lot of like short stories and like articles and stuff online. I feel like that's all I have the attention span for. I did start reading a biography of Marlon Brando just because like
Oh,
that is intense and kind of like yeah, and very interesting.
yeah,
He admits to, and like what he did not admit to in his book.
yeah.
That.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should try some short stories. I think that's a good idea because
Mhm.
I've started several books and I go a couple chapters and I like it, but I can't focus right now.
Yeah,
So
I'm really struggling with focus. I really struggle with like a lot. And even like, I don't know about you, but like my writing process, I have to like literally go, it's okay if you sit in front of the computer and all you can do is like a paragraph and a half.
yeah,
Paragraph and a half you didn't have before.
yeah. No, initially I was beating myself up because I'm like, I don't have to go into work every day. I have all this time.
Yeah.
Um, and I did less than when I'm working full time,
Yeah.
So
Well, because when you're working full time, the time that you have is like the time for yourself is so precious. Like I know that because I've been a writer who has had to support herself with like day jobs as well. And it's like the time you get is so precious and so rare. So I
mm,
can fully appreciate that.
yeah, I'm jealous. I talked to a writer a few days ago, and she right as everything was blowing up, she was finishing up her first draft for something that was due to the publisher
Mm-hmm.
just a couple weeks ago. So she said it was actually good for her because she was just in this space of working, like she had the momentum before, and so she was
Mm-hmm.
finishing up. But she said the last 2 weeks have been kind of tough, and she's just wandering around and staring at the
Yeah.
wall.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
she's like,
That's
I
what
need to get something else going on quick.
that sounds, I mean, no, I did too. Like, I was like, I mean, I was like, okay. And I had an idea for something and I was like, I don't know that I'm ready to do it yet. And then I was like, bitch, what else are you going to
Right.
do?
Yeah.
like,
No. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking of yeah, so I'm thinking about nonfiction that
mm-hmm.
I've been reading. So Brando sounds interesting. I'm reading one on Ulysses S Grant,
Oh,
which is
wow.
pretty fascinating. I mean, it's going to take me a long time to get through it. It's a beast, but
Mm-hmm.
um, interesting guy. I don't read a lot of presidential biographies,
No.
but this one is like he's a different. Well, he's a alcoholic, struggled,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, just seemed like a sensitive, maybe a little too sensitive of a guy.
Yeah.
But then he
Yeah.
was like, I mean, then the polar opposite, he's this incredible military general. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
He's an interesting guy, complex for sure. So
Yeah.
I love biographies. Yeah, I'm trying to think of.
I do too. Well, and the Brando one is really interesting because it's like he's saying that like this is him like in his own words, and like and he like I mean the shade that he gives to his parents in this book is like because so like at one point like sorry I love
I
Brando
do too.
and
Yeah.
like young Brando and like young James Dean. Well,
Mm-hmm.
James Dean never got to be anything but young, but like rebel James Dean were like a big influence on me in creating my main character for this book. So like I know like so Brando's parents at one point, as I'm sure you know, send him off to military school.
Mm-hmm.
And he like includes a bunch of letters that he send to his parents and like basically they're like, you're not paying attention to me, you haven't written me back, I'm sick here, I'm tired, I'm lonely, gosh it sure is lonely here, Dad, if you would just come to these games, I'm doing so well. And it's like the shade of it is like really, I mean damn. And he just is like, yeah, I sent all these letters and they never wrote me back. Like
Oh,
he
wow.
hated his father. It's just like,
Oh man, he needed some attention. It sounds like. Good thing he
yeah, he
became an
did.
actor,
Yeah,
huh?
no, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. Let's see what else. So you're trying to work on something new. You're trying to get something. Did you say you're working on short stories or?
No, I'm like very careful about talking about things
Yeah,
because
don't
I
talk
don't
about it.
want.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
No, you know what? It's funny though. Like short stories, I have such respect for people who can write short stories because I feel like I can't do it. Like I always want to branch out and go long. And I feel like there's this like distinction in the literary world where it's like novels and book length, um, nonfiction are like the only things that count as serious
Yeah.
literary endeavors. And I'm like, poetry is fucking hard. I can't do it. Short stories, like I can't, I'm not good at them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and like book length nonfiction, I've yet to figure out how to crack that code. So I very much respect people who can do the short story collection and do it well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I think
Important.
yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, I mean, in a lot of ways, it can be a superior
Oh
writer because
yeah.
I mean, it's so impressive, and it is, if they stick with that format, it is so sad that a lot of it just does not get, even if it gets published, it doesn't get read, a lot of times.
Yeah. And honestly, it's easier to read than
Yeah,
because you can sit down, like, you can be, not to be crass, but like you can be in the bathroom and you can read a short story.
that's
You can
what I
read a
was thinking of right now.
you can read a piece of flash fiction and it's,
Hmm.
it's done and it's there. I think the thing too, and I do, like you mentioned sort of pandemic creativity earlier, and I do sort of wonder if when we come out of, I mean, I don't know about you, but like my attention span has very much truncated.
Hmm. Me too.
Um, and some of that I think is just what the political reality that we've been living through for the past couple of years. But where there's like basically like a career ending scandal for anyone else like every 5 minutes,
Hmm.
and now with the pandemic everything is so much worse. I'm very curious to see how things are going to swing if you're going to see people embrace different formats that are beyond these sort of big, sprawling, Herculean. I think there's going to be still like an emphasis on the big, sprawling Herculean novel and like nonfiction collection. Is this like, authorly valor, like what have you. But I'm very curious if new sort of structural forms are going to emerge out of this. And if we're going to have more patience and more acceptance for things that are not within what we think we know.
Right. That would be awesome if that happened.
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
the last month or so, I think one thing that has helped me with attention span, because I'm
Mhm.
struggling with it for sure.
Yeah.
I've been watching just kind of like, I kind of stumbled upon a couple just shows on Netflix
Mm.
that are from other countries. Like
Yes.
I'm watching one from Finland
Mm.
and different things like that. So I'm not tempted to check my phone because I got to read the subtitles.
That's great. Oh,
It's
that's a
really
good idea.
so I found you should watch a show called Caliphate. It's only one season.
Ooh.
It's a limited series. Um, I think it's out of Sweden.
Ooh.
I don't want to spoil anything, but that was incredible. It's pretty heavy, but it's amazing. It was like one of the best pieces of storytelling I have been exposed to in quite a while. So
Oh, that's
it's been
awesome.
helpful, just kind of like focusing outside of this country for a minute and getting out of the headspace of of America has been really nice.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because usually, like, I started off like this, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch all the stuff that I've been told, because like film and TV and media does influence my process a lot, and I take in a lot of movies, I take in a lot of TV because I write about it a lot, and I did start off like the beginning of all of this, like I watched High Life with Robert Pattinson, which I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't, no.
It's good. It's interesting because it's basically like him as this like grimy, low life criminal, and he's trying to like help his brother. And it's the guys who did Uncut Gems.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of like just know what to do with Robert Pattinson, because I find him like very interesting. I didn't mean to like derail this into
no, this is fascinating to me.
I find him very interesting as a performer because he has such contempt for Twilight and for the character that he plays. And because like if you watch like the interviews of him, like he knows the character is creepy and he knows the character is like obnoxious, and he even at one point is like this is like this woman's, I think he like even words it like this or slightly more diplomatically, but he's like this is this woman's creepy masturbatory fantasy and I don't like it.
It's not me, I promise, right?
Yeah, but they kind of know what to do with him. So I was on a weird like Robert Pattinson kick.
I gotta check that out.
It's very good. And then he was in this other one. No, Good Time. I'm sorry. Good Time is the one with where he plays the criminal, and it's by the Safdie brothers. High Life is the one he does with Claire Denis, where he is a criminal again, but he's a criminal in space, and he's on this like spaceship of people, and they're doing all these like weird fertility experiments. I like mix the two of them up, but he's also really interesting in that. That one's a little bit of a harder watch, but it's still good. And then I watched like Fast Color. I watched Honey Boy. I was like, I'm gonna watch all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then it just like bled on and on and on and on. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do Tiger King.
Right, I know. I've been beaten down to the point where I'm gonna watch Tiger King.
Have you seen that yet?
I did watch Tiger King, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Talking about anti-heroes though, I mean, again, it's very interesting to me how like he's been turned into this folk hero, and there's a lot of empathy extended to this man in this series, but you do have to wonder, at the lack of empathy that is given to other people like Carol.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
if Joe Exotic were not a white man with a blonde mullet, would he be seen as so folksy or so interesting, right?
Well, aren't they making a movie with Nicolas Cage playing him? That's what I heard.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. Like a lot of the stuff that I've watched, and even when it's good, it all kind of bleeds together. And like I get shows mixed up, and so that's why I like this. Like going international. It's been a good kick because I live in Salt Lake, so I'm able to go up to Sundance and Slam Dance every year. We cover that, so that's a lot of fun. And I think my favorite things are just seeing the foreign films or the international films. You just see things that most of these films will never get. You can't find them on any streaming platform after, so they're just up there, and then they're kind of lost to the ether there. But incredible films, and just seeing some amazing storytellers from different cultures has been really cool. So yeah, try that. That's been helpful to me. The series have been good. Like watch a series that's from a different I love Swedish stuff. That's the best.
I will do that because I do think I need something, and I'm trying to think what the last thing that I watched was I did watch that movie Shirley, the one that's based on the life of Shirley Jackson.
I wanted to see that. Yeah, that was at Sundance, I believe, this last year. I didn't get a chance to catch that one though.
It's interesting. I mean, I think there's some complaint about the way that they kind of rework certain components of her life for the sake of the story, and I'm just going to be very careful because I don't want to spoil anything. but again, like I think that's really interesting to like kind of reframe the conversation about who gets to be a tortured genius and have that shown as like this compelling narrative on
Right.
screen. And it was kind of nice to see that same framework like applied to like a woman author. And particular, I mean, I didn't know her like much beyond The Lottery, I have to admit, and I got to learn more about her. So like I read some more of her stories, and I'll like probably check out some of her novels coming into the fall.
Yeah, I bought a collection because I I don't know a lot about her, but I bought a collection of her a while back, so I need to crack that open. Yeah, it just sounds like a fascinating
Oh yeah.
person,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
tragic in
and
a lot of ways. Yeah.
very much so. And the filmmaking is like really kind of dreamlike and has this like, feeling of like a hallucination that's like really compelling. And it was sort of like, it was like I needed it as just like a jolt, throughout all of this, because I think it's easy to just get sort of be in like a brain fog or like kind of a fugue state.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
oh, I was going to say something. I just totally, yeah, see,
No, you're
I
okay.
can't focus,
No, I feel like I have like not even talked about my book that much.
Well, let's talk about the book more. If you mean, we don't want to spoil anything. I know.
No. I mean, but I know I feel bad. I mean, if there's just anything that you want to talk about or have me
No,
keep
I mean, I
listening,
kind of, that's what I like conversations like this where we're just kind of having an
really,
organic conversation and, you know,
I love
um,
it.
talk about recommendations and different things like that.
No, it's
Uh,
good.
yeah, okay. So we could talk about, I don't know if you love him or hate him, but Bukowski, there,
Mm.
there's a new, so that's what I'm doing tonight. There's a new
Mm.
film
Mm.
that came out. Someone I think just hung out with him one night in the early 80s, and that's what the film is. So I'll check that out. I
Interesting.
don't know.
Interesting.
Talk
I
about
have to be
torture genius, right?
I have to be honest. So this is where like I feel like I was sort of coming of age artistically at a time point. I mean, I'm 38. I don't
Mhm.
care about sharing that. And like a lot of like the women writers that I know were like, oh man, fuck you. And I was like, so I never really read him. That's
Yeah.
like a deficit in my education. So I don't have strong feelings about him one way or the other because I am not exposed to him.
I mean, he's crazy. So I think
Yeah,
people love him or hate him. There tends to not be
anywhere in
in the
between.
middle. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. He's fascinating. Even if you hate him, I think he is a fascinating character.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it's like from a creative standpoint, as a character or persona, fascinating. Do you want to follow them? Can you learn something from them in their life? Like that's the worthwhile pursuit.
Right. Well, someone just told me a story the other day that uh, they were they almost moved into one of his old studio apartments
Oh my God.
years and years ago, and the landlord told her that one night he had a suicide attempt where he drank a ton of alcohol, put his head in the oven, turned it
Oh
on,
my
but he
God.
didn't pay he didn't pay
Hidden
the
face.
gas bill, so
Oh,
he just passed
I
out in
should
the
laugh
oven.
at that.
So
So he like saved his own life without
yeah,
realizing it.
by not making enough money and
Oh
paying the
my
bills on
God.
time.
That is, I don't want to say that's great because it's
Yeah.
awful that he was in that position and he felt like he had to, but like, holy cow,
Yeah.
that is a story.
And when you read his stuff, it's like, that that
Damn.
doesn't surprise me.
Wow.
So it's amazing
Shit.
he lived as long as he did, really.
Well, William S. Burroughs lived to be like, what, 100?
He was pretty old. I don't know how old exactly, but he went pretty wild and he
Yeah.
lasted.
Well, that's the thing that's funny is it's like, I mean, when I was like in my teens, I had like my little beat period. And then when you get to be, at least when I was like in my 20s, like I reread some of it again. And I was like, this was not very good to women. Like I can't, like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I appreciate the contributions to the canon and whatnot, but I can't fuck with this anymore. Uh, like, and so, but like I remember like reading like Ginsberg was, I think he was in his 60s. Kerouac was much younger than that, I think. But like Burroughs, of all of them, that he made it to be like in his hundreds is like you know, like we have this culture, right, that wants to tell you, like, drink your kale smoothie and like get your vitamins and do your yoga and do your deep breathing and like, you know, get your Peloton bike. And very much like I equate being healthy with, or have meeting certain definitions of health with moral virtue and creative virtue and achieving your full potential, right?
Right.
And I love that you have William S. Burroughs like make it well into his like at least 100. Like I love that.
Yeah. I mean, even Vonnegut, he would have made it. I mean, he smoked Pall Malls every day, and he
I
would have made it. But
know.
and if he hadn't, I think he fell off a ladder, right? And
I know. Oh,
terrible. But he was still kicking.
yeah. Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
don't. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, again, I kind of skewer all that stuff, but
Yeah.
it's, yeah, that's dang. I will have to look at some of Bukowski then, because that's a hell of a story.
Some of his stuff, like I love Bukowski, but
Mm-hmm.
some of it's pretty awful
Mm-hmm.
towards women. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
don't read the book called Women. There's a book called Women.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna stay away
There's
from
some
it.
horrible things in there. That I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, I can't believe I still read the whole thing, but I mean, oh my
Yeah,
God, he's an amazing writer, I think. But
yeah,
wow. Well,
yeah.
let's finish up. Let's talk a bit more about your book without
Okay,
giving out any
cool. Yeah,
spoilers. But um,
yeah.
I don't know. How have you? I always find it interesting, like reading on the back how it's kind of marketed,
Uh-huh.
how it's framed, and how maybe your intentions as a writer, because you're not
Mm-hmm.
really thinking, most writers aren't really thinking about how am I going
Mm-hmm.
to market this. You're just trying to
Mm-hmm.
write a good story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the way it was marketed was kind of aligned with exactly where you were going from it, and they helped?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I sort of have the benefit, you know, when you're writing it, you know, obviously you're in this space where you're writing it. So my background in terms of like day job work, and I don't mean to make that sound dismissive, it is what
Hmm.
pays the bills, but I joke sometimes and I say like my writing self is like my Superman Kal-El self, and then my like day job self, the part of me that like goes to an office, is the Clark Kent self, and I even have the glasses. Um, but it was in marketing. It was in marketing and communications. So I feel like in that way, I definitely had a leg up. And I, you know, like I said, and to bring it back, like, you know, this book was out for quite a while, and we got a lot of like, we really like her writing, but we really like the characters, but, you know, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. And then, you know, it ended up at Dzanc, which is exactly where it had to end up because they're a wonderful press and the team there is amazing. And I've had nothing but good experiences working with them. And, you know, when I initially started talking to them about publishing the book, like we had conversations about marketing and they were very receptive to my ideas, just because like I even said to them, I said, I have experience in this. Like I've written press releases, I've sent stuff out, like I know a little bit about how to do these things. And so like, I guess if that was, you know, another piece of advice that I might have for writers, you know, if you can think about what other skills you have to like kind of leverage your own talent, leverage your own ability, promote your own work, like, you know, don't think that it's just a matter of sitting down and writing the story. You know, you also have to be prepared to do some of those things. And it's good if you can be your own advocate. It's better if you have a great champion in a press, as I did, but like it's also very good if you know how to do those things. So I think it was very much aligned with where I wanted to go with it. I think also the fact that we were having a very different conversation about anger and women and anger, because my main character, her whole arc is really, and I did this deliberately, but it's kind of the arc that is given to like the quote unquote angry young man in a piece like, you know, Rebel Without a Cause or like The Wild One or On the Waterfront. These are things that I looked at where she has to learn to balance her own anger. What is productive? What is not productive? What is useful? And what is just, I've learned this from seeing my father and therefore I'm going to do it. And we were in this like cultural moment where we're thinking about what what is going to happen with all this anger that women are feeling? Where is it going to come out? How is it going to get channeled? What is it going to mean ultimately? So I felt like we were in a good place to sort of enter into the conversation with that and say, here's another way of thinking about this. Here's another avenue to talk about it.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, that's really interesting. I think like, you talk to most writers, even ones that have a name, like people know them,
Mm-hmm.
they have
Yeah.
they're professors or they teach,
Yep.
wherever, or they do workshops. Um, so I think that's great advice
Yeah.
to young writers, to be like, maybe don't be in a hurry to just, I mean, that's the goal, I
Yeah.
guess, for a lot of people, but maybe take advantage of the fact that you are kind of living this different life where
Yes.
that's going to help your writing. Like there's a guy, he's up in Cheyenne, Wyoming. He writes genre fiction, puts out a
Yeah.
book every year, very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And he, for the longest time, he was selling a lot of books, and he still, with his wife, ran a travel agency in
Yeah.
downtown Cheyenne, Wyoming. So,
Yeah.
and he said there, and like what you said earlier, when you do have that structured time,
Yeah.
your free time is so much more valuable, and
Yeah.
you can really make it, you can use it to your benefit.
Well, and I think, if there's one other thing that I want to say, and, to the other writers who are listening to this, that I had to learn this lesson very hard way, lots of tears, lots of disappointment, is just that we have this culture across the board, right, that values youth, that says that only accomplishments that you do in your 20s really matter. And I think that goes across the board for publishing books, making movies, becoming a star, becoming, having a family, whatever. And the best thing that happened, and I remember thinking I was doomed and I was done if I did not have a book come out by the time I was in 30. And it would have to be like this big success. It would have to, be well reviewed everywhere. I would have to be, have to become like a star by the time I was 30, or it was whatever. And I had to do a lot of like learning that, yeah, like there are people that get those amazing opportunities and it happens to them, and it happens to them out of the blue. And that has nothing to do with me. It's them. Sometimes people get these opportunities because of who they are and who they know and who their family is. And again, that has nothing to do with me. I can't control it. And then when I started to turn 29, 30, it was like, okay, this didn't happen. You're not dead. You're not a pile of smoking ash. But like the life experiences that I had accumulated in that time period made the work that I did much richer and much stronger and much better observed, even down to like some of the class dynamics, being someone who has to be a working artist. That is all in the book. Beyond sort of this issue of anger, she has to focus on like, how am I going to define myself and support myself as an artist, and how am I going to learn to make compromises, because that's what I had to learn to do. And I could have never written that angle of it when I was 22 or 23. We're not all going to be, superstars at 22 or 23. We're not all going to be superstars, period. But it's when you get older, I think the barometer changes. And so then when I hit, and I'm not going to lie to you, like it was, we were sending it out there and we were getting passes and passes and passes. It was painful. It was sad. But I did have to hit a point where I was like, this is not the end of me. I'm not like I said, I'm not a smoldering pile of ash. I'm still here. What can I do to move on? And to some degree, it was like when I was like, okay, then it happened. And then when it happened, I was able to go, okay, I'm going to let go of all these ideas that I have about who I was going to be when this came out. And I'm going to focus on doing the best that I can for this book in the moment. And so I think I talk about this a lot and I ramble on about it a lot because I wish that people had been more direct about it when I was starting out. Like, I really wish that people had talked about, like, this is a journey, like, it's something that happens to you, you move through it, and then you ultimately will get to an end result. And it doesn't matter if you're 35, 45, 55, 65, 105. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that's my rant.
No, that's really good to hear. I think that, I mean, speaking for myself, I love hearing that. That makes me feel, because I'm 39 and we're pretty close in age.
Yeah.
And I was same thing. I was like, oh, by the time I'm 30, I'll have something out.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, by the time I'm 40, I have to have this thing I'm working on. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a, you just got to do the best you can and not project too far into the future, because it just tends not to happen when you try to over plan.
Yes. And that's the thing too, where it's like, it's exactly it. When you over plan for things, like, you have to prepare for it. I would have spared myself a lot of angst if I had just been like, this will happen in its own time when it is meant to happen. And yeah.
Yeah, great advice for everybody, no matter what your age is. So
Thank you.
I love that. Anything else? I mean, I think everyone should read Don't You Know I Love You by Laura Bogart. So please get a copy of that. Anything else you want to add about the book, or anything else before we wrap up?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me and championing the book. Thank you to Laura Albert for connecting us to. Everyone, please buy the book. Please recommend it to a friend. Recommend that it goes to your local library. If you get it, please get it from the Dzanc, that's DZANC website, or from, I think it's bookshop.org. Support your local indie bookseller. Those of us who've had books come out now, show us love, show us support, and I hope everyone stays safe and stays well and takes care of themselves and their nearest and dearest during this time.
That's great. All right, that's our show for today. We want to thank Laura Bogart for taking the time. Don't You Know I Love You is her first novel, out now on Dzanc Books. Check it out. You won't regret it.